Hello everyone. Today I'm doing something a little different. I'm going to show you how you can tie Lua events to map logic. This is kind of intended for global use add-ons that tie into map entities, like if you've ever seen those add-ons that let you knock down doors. Map-specific experiences, if you're looking for more fine control over the player than what Hammer has to provide, or game mode specific map functions if you want to create a quote like custom entity that you can put in a map and have interact with your game mode, collectibles, things like that. This is kind of the avenue you would use to do that. In this video, I will not be going over the basics of add-on creation, Lua, or mapping knowledge. I'm kind of assuming I would describe it as intermediate knowledge. You kind of have a base grasp of what you're doing. And second of all, we are going to make the map. So I'm just going to speed this up. I make a pretty basic dev box with just a button in it for my first example. So I'm just going to make a pretty simple brush, and I am going to make it a func underscore button. And it is important that whatever entity you create, it has a name, because the name is how we are going to find this specific entity through Lua. So I'm going to name it example underscore button. For a map specific experience, you really want to check if the map loaded is your map. So you can do if game get map does not equal in the name of your map, return end. If you're developing for game mode purposes, you can do the same, but with get game mode or game mode. There's two main things we need to do to make this work. We need to create an entity and we need to find an entity. The main method is ents find by name. Now, this method does nothing on the client, so we need to add a check for if we are the server. Whenever we first load up the map, we want to create the Lua hook that will run all of our code. So we're going to add the init post entity hook after all the other entities on the map have initialized. We are going to create an entity of the type Lua underscore run. We're going to give it a name, so I like to just go with Lua hook, and then we are going to spawn it. Now, you don't have to put all of your map setup in a separate function. I just like to do it because it keeps my hooks clean, it keeps my code clean. So after we spawn the map Lua, we are going to run this function, and this is where we actually set up our button or our entity. We're going to do for iv in ipairs, ents find by name, and this is where you're going to type the name of your entity that you created. So like mine is example underscore button. And we're going to make that for loop, and we're going to say v fire add output, and then the map logic event you want your code to run on. The button has a bunch of outputs, which you can't see the drop down, but we see we have on damaged, in, out, and pressed, and on use locked, and then you have all of the user fires. So I want my event to happen when someone pushes this button. So I'm going to do on pressed, and then you're going to go Lua hook, which is this entity we made down here, and we're going to tell it to run the code we pass to it, and what we're passing to it is a hook. So this is the name of your hook. Name it whatever you want, just as long as it's identifiable and it won't be a duplicate. And then 0, -1. This is the delay, and this is how many times it'll trigger. So -1 means it'll trigger infinitely, and 0 means there is no delay on the code running once I push this button. Right below that, we are going to add the hook that we just defined. And similar to how logic works in Hammer, you can do player equals activator. And for my purpose, we're going to go player nickname has pressed the button. And we can save this. So if we load up the map now, and we push the button, we can open the console, we can see player Sevyn has pressed the button. We go ahead back to our hammer view and we were to put a door in here. We're going to name this example underscore door. And we are going to F9 compile. We come back to our code here. We can do pretty much this same thing. And you can copy and paste this. Just need to change the input of the map entity, because this is a door. We're not pressing it, we're opening it. And we need to change the name of the hook. So we can do door underscore open. Now we're going to do local door is caller. So here is referencing the entity itself. So we can do door fire kill. And we push E on the door. It removes itself. You have to remember, in some situations, it is more efficient to create a custom kind of scripted entity. One thing to be mindful of is that the way this is set up right now, you have to remember this is only being ran once after the initialization of all entities on the map. Load into this map, and I make the door remove itself. But I do an admin cleanup. The door is not going to remove itself a second time because we are only setting up the map logic one time after entity initialization is done. So if you want to fix that, you can use the similar hook post cleanup map. And this runs every time a map cleanup is done, which is very common in game modes to reset the level in between rounds. So every time we clean up, this logic will be called again, and we set up all the entities that need to be set up. One thing to also be mindful of is that the client, if for whatever reason you want to network a map entity to the client will only be aware of entities that are within PVS. So more often than not, if the client is not in the same room as the entity you're trying to network, it will return as nil. So for a practical example of something you can do with this is one of my older projects, which is a Simon Says type game, and all of these are brush entities. So they have a toggle texture on them, and if I hit this shuffle color button, see, it shuffles all the colors of the brushes to be completely random. And this is a hammer button, this is a funk button, those are funk brushes with texture toggles on them, but whenever I am pushing this, it is running Lua code to randomize the colors of these tiles. And same with all of these buttons. I can push pick a color, and it changes textures, it plays sounds, and it picks the winner. So, and I may just be making more tutorials in the future on things that I personally found frustrating when trying to learn Lua and the source engine in general, because these wiki pages are not helpful, and I know that a lot of these tutorials out there are more than 5 years old. But for now, thank you for watching. Subscribe if you found this video helpful. Have a good morning, afternoon, or night, and I will see you in the next one.